welcome back. It's the Sports Lodge here on a free-for-all Friday. Man, there's been so much happening the last week or so here in the Sports Lodge. We have been so busy, so many different stories to talk about. I'm so bummed that Tiger Woods withdrew from his own tournament today. I really, truly am. That was rough because I was really looking forward to going out and seeing that. I really, really was. But it's not going to happen because Tiger withdrew. So many great stories in the world of sports, but here's one that I haven't really talked about all that much. I did hit on it a little bit earlier in the week. And I mentioned earlier that, Southern California college basketball, UCLA, has now won 6 straight to get to 14-11 on the season. They're 2 back of Arizona in the Pac-12. They beat Colorado last night. The Bruins have Utah on Sunday. USC's not very good. They've lost 8 out of their last 10. Their coach, Andy Enfield, and a lot of people are out there saying, well, it's a good thing USC doesn't care about basketball or Andy Enfield would be gone by now. It's you can't make that comparison. You can't say that Andy Enfield is like Chip Kelly at UCLA, where nobody really cares about football. People would say, oh, no one cares about football at UCLA, or else Chip Kelly would have been gone a long time ago. Chip Kelly was 35-34 in his tenure at UCLA. Andy Enfield, it doesn't even compare. The last 4 years of USC basketball, 22-9, 25-8, made the tournament. 26-8, made the tournament. 22-11, made the tournament. But they're just not very good this year. They're 10-15, 4-10 in the conference. Only Oregon State is worse. But when it comes to UCLA and their football program, and the fact that Chip Kelly was out there interviewing for NFL jobs, and now he ends up taking the offensive coordinator position at Ohio State in the conference where the Bruins are headed, I mean, what does this say about the UCLA football program? Deshaun Foster is their new head coach. He's never been a head coach anywhere. Nicest guy in the world. I know the players love him. I get all that. But that's a curious hire. It really, truly is. Joining me to discuss a guy that's all over this UCLA story, a guy that has a great college football book that he's working on as well. Let's welcome in for the first time, gentleman by the name of Mark Schipper here in the Sports Lodge. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing great, Roger. How about yourself? Glad to be on with you today.
Hey, thanks for jumping on. And can you just quickly give me a little scenario on when do you think, because, I mean, this happened so fast with Deshaun Foster taking over for Chip Kelly. How long do you think UCLA knew that something was up with Chip?
Yeah, a long time. Last season, 2023 season, there was a move to dismiss Chip in October, November. UCLA had a disastrous month. They lost to arguably the worst Arizona State football team in modern history at home. They were beat by Arizona. There were rumors of a skirmish in the halftime locker room amongst some of the players on the team. The season was unraveling a little bit, and it had been kind of trending that direction with Chip. And so there was a move made to get rid of him, but it fell through for various reasons. But Chip knew about it. There was a newspaper story written. A UCLA booster went public with a statement that said, talk of firing Chip is ridiculous, which kind of let the cat out of the bag that something had been in the works. Obviously, he'd been contacted about a buyout or something. And from that moment forward, I would say Chip knew his athletic director had moved to fire him, and he began seeking a path out of Westwood.
Was he just not the most aggressive guy when it came to, the transfer portal, seeking NIL money, booster? How did the boosters feel about Chip Kelly? Do you know?
Yeah, he didn't have good relationships with really anybody in the UCLA community, the fans, the boosters, the NIL. Chip's interesting personality. He's a ball play caller, designer, concept guy. He wants to sit in the film room, dissect things, and then he wants to call plays on the sideline. Everything else, particularly in the college game, when you're talking about the almost political position of a head coach in terms of how you have to cultivate relationships, and you need to ask people for money and everything else you need to do to go out on the trail and recruit. The transfer portal was actually his saving grace during his time at UCLA, and I think that was because the transfer portal was the easiest way to recruit. You had more mature players who knew what they wanted to do, and so Chip got some good guys, but high school recruiting was disastrous under Chip.
What do you know about the process before they hired Deshaun Foster? Was there anybody else in the running?
Yeah, they interviewed a bunch of people, talked to a bunch of people. I shouldn't say interview. They interviewed a few people, or at least had more in-depth talks with a few candidates. They chatted with or had at least informal conversations with many. I've seen as many as like 21 or 22 reported. I think 11 is a more reasonable number from what I've heard. I know of a few of them. There were some issues. I would say one of the critical issues UCLA had is when Chip Kelly was extended in the 2023 season, which is part of what led to these issues. The AD mismanaged his extension. Chip got his guys extended, and he signed a new defensive coordinator. So whatever coach was coming into Westwood, UCLA wasn't going to buy those contracts out right after signing them. So they were going to be saddled with at least part of a coaching staff for a couple of years. And as you know, when you're a new guy coming into a college situation, especially a high-pressure situation, UCLA Big Ten, you want your trusted officers around you, and you want to build your own program. So UCLA had painted themselves into a corner.
Did Martin Jarmon ever have a discussion with Pete Carroll? Do we know?
I don't know about that. I have heard there was a call, but I have no information on talking to Pete Carroll. I would be stunned if Pete Carroll wanted to get back into college football at his age and with the extra work that's been added to the job even since he was at USC. So everyone talked about that. It's kind of an interesting idea to get him back in L.A. because it was such a big deal at USC when he was there, but I don't think Pete Carroll wants to coach college football.
Do you think that's kind of why Nick Saban all of a sudden wants to go back to being a TV star?
Yeah, big time. It's people ask me about this. I think if you wound back the clock 10 years on Nick Saban, he'd be right in the heart of this thing, fighting at the top of the pyramid for all the best stuff. I think Nick Saban said it a couple of times. He said, listen, at my age, these hours, I can't handle them like I used to. The 17-hour days and going like crazy from the time you wake up until the time you go to sleep. He just said the toll was too heavy on me now, and I can't do it at this age anymore. So I think that was the thing with Saban, is he was just the job was getting more difficult, not less difficult, and he was ready to be done.
Hey, Mark, your personal opinion, is the NIL and the transfer portal ruining college football?
No, not ruining. It's important that the players get cut in on this. It's important that they're allowed to profit off their work. By the time you get to that level of athleticism, especially just, we're talking about college football here, so we can just leave it there. But you get to Division I big-time college football, I mean, you essentially are, in many ways, a professional athlete. And you may not make it in the NFL or the CFL or any professional platform, but you might be a big college star. And the idea that you generate the revenue you generate for the schools, coaches, everyone else, and you can't tap into it, that is not right, and that needed to change. But the situation we have now with NIL and the third-party collective, it's not actually NIL. A lot of this stuff, it's raising money from boosters and fans and creating a payroll for college teams. NIL is about a player acquiring deals for themselves, marketing deals, et cetera. A local car dealership wants to put them in a car and slap their picture up on the wall. That's an NIL deal. What we're getting now is like pseudo payroll stuff. So I think we're looking at a continued revolution in college athletics, and we're going to get a different system in not too long.
Do you think, Mark, we'll ever get to a point like, okay, if I was doing a television show tonight and one of the scenes that I wrote, I had taking place in a bar, the stars of the show, like on Friends when they used to go to the coffee shop. All right, so Ross and one of the other characters, they go into the coffee shop. There's atmosphere, extras in the background, patrons of that coffee shop. They get a little stipend to show up and make that scene. They're all needed to make that scene. Do you think we'll ever get to the day in college football, two teams are playing, 100,000 people, 90,000 people are watching. The game's on national television. You need every single player on those rosters to make that game possible. Do you think we'll ever get to a point where every player on the roster for that particular game that's on national television, that's taking in a lot of ad revenue, every single player gets some sort of stipend?
Yeah, I do. I think revenue sharing is coming, and that will obviously entail, it's a complicated process. We don't know how it's going to look, but it will entail some kind of collective bargaining association for college athletes, college football players. It's a little tricky because college football players move in and out so quickly. You know, they're starting and getting significant time on the field for 2, 3, maybe 4 years if they're extremely talented, and then they move on. So it's a very fluid situation. But yeah, I think there will be a time when the television media rights revenue is shared and everyone on the roster will get something. They'll probably stagger that in some way. I'm not sure how, but yeah, I do think that day is coming.
Okay, Deshaun Foster, he's never been the head coach anywhere. What are your thoughts on that hire?
Well, it goes back to the corner UCLA, had sort of worked itself into, and then as a consequence of Chip, been put into. Foster knows that coaching staff, and so he's much more comfortable coming in with Chip's guys because they were his colleagues. So Foster, I think the important thing about Foster is he has brought excitement to the fan base. It has gone from an ugly, acrimonious situation with Chip to a happy situation just in terms of having someone who understands UCLA's heritage, the pride in the program, and what it used to mean to the school. So I think he'll give a boost to fundraising. I think he'll sell, especially initially, a lot more tickets than Chip sold because UCLA people are going to turn out to support him. Now, how long Deshaun Foster lasts in the head coaching job, I don't know. I think UCLA is looking at it as if, well, if we hire this first-time guy and he turns out to be a great coach like Terry Donahue did so many years ago, that's perfect for us. But if not, I think they'll probably try to keep his buyout at a reasonable number. And in a couple years, when Chip's coach's contracts reset and the plane is a little clearer for UCLA, I think if Foster's not working out, they'll make their move for another type of head coach. So it was just it was a tough circumstance right now for UCLA, and they wanted to get it done so quickly. So they had a lot going against them.
Hey, Mark, is the reason UCLA plays in the Rose Bowl and doesn't have anything closer or anywhere near their campus, I mean, how much is that killing UCLA football? And what has been the number one issue why they couldn't get an on-campus stadium? Was it just simply there wasn't the available space?
Are we familiar with the term NIMBYs on this program? NIMBYS?
Yeah.
They got some powerful NIMBYs over there on the west side. So not in my backyard. They weren't going to hit the traffic, et cetera, et cetera. But that was more of a modern problem. You know, the problem, Roger, that happened early in the program, UCLA founded in 1919, started playing football immediately. 1923, I believe, the Coliseum opens. So both UCLA and USC play in the Coliseum, and they share it forever. Now, that was very convenient at the time because UCLA is a new school they're building up. But what would have been much better for them is when that campus got built in Westwood, that was nothing but open land. It was farmland, rolling hills. There was plenty of room for a stadium, but they had the Coliseum. So by the time the sort of Coliseum era ended, there was nowhere to build in Westwood. The NIMBYs didn't want it, and the Rose Bowl was kind of the option. So USC, UCLA separated, and that's been the issue. I have heard behind the scenes there have been pushes made to maybe get a stadium built on campus in the area where the Drake track field is, if you know where that is.
Sure.
Yeah, so, there could be space for a modest-sized stadium there. I know some powerful people have been working on it, but it's a major uphill battle with the power of the property owners over there.
I'll tell you, Mark, I used to play in the NBA Entertainment Basketball League, and one of my teammates back in the day was Casey Wasserman, and Casey and I used to sit on the bench and make fun of everybody who couldn't play. I need to make a call to Casey Wasserman. He's got the power to get something done, don't you think?
Hey, he draws a lot of water in that town, so
Yeah.
absolutely.
And when I was a little bitty boy growing up in Lakewood, California, my father, the great Bob Lodge, former power forward out of Washington State, he worked in sporting goods. Coach Wooden was one of his clients. Coach Wooden used to call our house, and I'd sneak in the back bedroom and pick up the phone and listen to my dad talk to John Wooden, the greatest college basketball coach of all time. That's how far I go back with UCLA athletics. That's why I have a passion about it. What about you? What's your connection with UCLA, and when did it begin?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Midwest, interesting enough. I was born in Iowa City, grew up outside Minneapolis, and then I ended up going to UCLA for school. And so I graduated from UCLA in 2008, and it's my alma mater. So that's my connection. It's a big surprise to me, Roger, that I ever ended up at UCLA. It was not in the plan. I grew up watching college football as a very national fan of the game. So UCLA was just a big rivalry game to me. I hadn't picked a side as a kid, and then I ended up at UCLA for school.
Love it. Hey, can you give my audience a little tease on the book you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so I went on what I called the American Odyssey 2021 season and a couple supplemental trips in 2022. I went to basically the best rivalry games the sport has to offer, the most historic stadiums, significant schools, etc. And actually what was going on, the reason I did that is I sort of forecasted the revolution that was on the horizon. I was watching them play football in empty stadiums in 2020 for TV money, and I said, this dam is about to burst. So I got to get the old college game as much as I can, experience it in person before it's gone forever. And then I wanted to talk about what the game had meant to this country, to its history, to its culture, and combine those two things and sort of point to where the future's headed. So it's really it's a college football book, it's an American travel book, and it's a history culture book. So I think it'll be a fun read for people on multiple levels.
In your opinion, is there an absolute most competitive, fiercest rivalry in all of college football, bar none?
Bar none. I don't think there's bar none. I think there's like a top tier. If I was going to have to pick bar none, Michigan, Ohio State is probably it. That is as ferocious a rivalry as there is. But I think they're in kind of a tier with like 5, 6, 7, 8 other games.
Would Alabama Auburn be in there?
Oh yeah. Between those fans, it is no joke in that state. I mean, it's 365 days a year, and you have to pick a side. You can't be neutral. So it dominates that state totally.
Yeah, it's either Roll Tide or War Eagle, and there's no in between, right?
No, they're angry. If you try to go neutral in that, they'll be angry with you. You got to pick a side.
Mark, we got to have you back on when the book's ready to roll. I truly appreciate your time here in the Sports Lodge. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you, Roger. It was my pleasure.
All right, Mark Schipper right there in the Sports Lodge here on a Friday talking about that whole Chip Kelly thing. Oh, man, don't get me started on that deal. My goodness. 714-2-830. 830, that's...